Writing and New Media, Theory and Applications for Expanding the Teaching of Composition is the kind of composition scholarship educators dream about. The authors present a set of related pedagogical theories of writing and new media, and then present and analyze a set of teaching materials that demonstrate precisely how these theories might be applied in the composition classroom. The work is framed as a response to a metaphorical rug having been pulled out from under us as the printed book moves to the margins of our literate culture. This rug, however, is not print culture itself, but an increasingly obsolete unawareness of writing as a material practice, as we again stand up and dust ourselves off. Ironically, though we have long experienced texts as material, we have neglected the rhetorical potential of this materiality. Drawing from Self and Self's Politics of the Interfaces discussion of the materiality of the GUI and Kirschenbaum's work on formal materiality, the authors argue that the hallmark of an old media text is the standard formatting, which attempts to transcend materiality in favor of pure meaning. Ultimately, this book is not arguing that we need to open writing classes to new media. Instead, new media needs to be open to what writing teachers already know, precisely because writing teachers focus specifically on how texts and how situated people learn how to use them in order to make things happen. As writing teachers, then, we are called to bring our expertise to the analysis of the materiality of new media. These texts, however, do not have to be digital. New media texts are really any text in which the author has considered and taken advantage of its materiality, that is, graphic arrangement, font, color, texture, interactivity. Though arguable, while there is much work on bringing new media into the writing classroom, the authors say that there is no composition scholarship that encourages writers to consider the rhetorical effects of the material possibilities inherent in new media composition beyond cursory considerations of mood and readability. To highlight the materiality of writing, the authors suggest that we ask our students to write a 2-page essay on crayon and to then talk in class about what felt different. Did they think differently? Did they come up with new ideas? Did they lose ideas? We asked them to consider a culture where all writing happened in crayon. How do they think that culture would differ from ours? What can we say about writing implements and bodies? In another activity, the rhetoric of materiality is considered, where the authors suggest that students produce 2 short pieces of writing, one where they choose formatting that they think is most rhetorically effective, and another where they justify those choices. Then, in groups, we are encouraged to analyze these texts. How does formatting change how they read? Finally, we might ask them to revise their pieces only in regard to formatting to see what changes would be most effective. This kind of work, the authors argue, is not only important theoretically, it is important also for skills-based pedagogy. That is, if the work of the writing classroom is to prepare students to participate fully and competently in public discourse, we must teach them to design communication using modes of representation much broader than language alone. Taking up this question, Geoffrey Sirk's chapter Box Logic asks if we finally journey away from the linear norm of essayist prose, which the everyday world implores us to do, where do we go? He suggests that the means or media are not as important as the expressive or conceptual uses afforded by them. That is, the focus of new media pedagogy should be rhetorical. Sirk's box logic, then, draws on Adam Banks' conception of composition as a remix coupled with the box as a container of discrete objects, and asks us to think about composition rather as English juxtaposition. Sirk's box logic assignments ask students, for example, to juxtapose discrete media objects as a way to produce new meaning. Anne Frances Wysocki likewise argues that conventional visual media analysis actually works against helping students to acquire critical and thoughtful agency with the visual. The preference we give to layout and design over the socio-historical allows us to explain why this peak advertisement evokes pleasure but falls short in thinking through why it evokes anger. She therefore offers us assignments that ask students to begin by collecting and grouping images, rather than with design concepts like optical focus and gaze motion. By comparing and contrasting images, students develop their own criteria for analysis that grows out of the visual media itself rather than something imposed on it. John Johnson Aloya likewise argues that for all our talk about the evolution of composition instruction, what we teach and how we teach it hasn't really changed. Writing instruction still takes up as its primary focus the creative production of original words in linear streams that some reader receives and understands, despite the fact that this hardly reflects the day-to-day compositions. Johnson Aloya therefore proposes 2 methods for understanding textuality in our postmodern world. The first, writing as symbolic analytical work, suggests that we focus on the manipulation of information, bringing together multiple fragmented contexts in an attempt to broker solutions, rather than production of original text. The second method, writing as articulation, asks us to move beyond the sender, transmission, receiver model toward a theory of contexts. That is, we might think of composition as an arrangement of or a connection of a contingent play of existing forces, rather than simply one creative utterance. His first assignment, then, asks students to develop a blog as a mix of original and copied texts as a way to investigate the original-copy divide. Another assignment experiments with search engines, asking students to compare varying results they receive from search engines on the same query. Students are encouraged to see search engines as texts worthy of analysis. The Who's Visible assignment likewise asks students to look hard at how different demographics are constructed visually and to question the ostensible demographic nature of the internet. Students are asked to search for themselves a demographic category they identify with and a set of other terms and analyze these results. Ultimately, all of the assignments offered in this book ask students to investigate the materiality of new media in ways that expand our thinking about the ever-evolving nature of composition. And while this book was published nearly 10 years ago, it continues to be an incredibly relevant text. Just as Johnson Aloya argued in 2004, though we have made great theoretical gains, not much has changed in the composition classroom. Though this writing in new media is heavily pedagogical, it is also highly theoretical. It draws from the work of digital media scholars outside the realm of composition, including Kirschenbaum, Self and Self, and Lebmanovich, and considers how these theories play out in day-to-day compositions to reframe the writing classroom as a response to the demands new media continues to make of us.